Welcome back to the weekend wrap. No production, just my thoughts. As always, please like and subscribe. Share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. And apologies that there was no basis picks this week or any casual stream, any hardcore casual episodes. I just needed a few days to kind of do nothing. And then when I was gonna do basis picks, initially something happened which sort of delayed me in getting started to do it. And then looking at this weekend, I really didn't care enough. And I know that probably shouldn't be the way that I do it. It should be done each week consistently. But if we're being honest, we knew that every A side was gonna be victorious this weekend. The only one I think there was any possible question in would have been Ryan Garner and Reece Bellotti. But look, let's just get straight into the first card. Now, I didn't see... Well, okay, I was watching little bits and pieces of the Queensbury card. I was also in between watching some other stuff. I saw, like, from the Abu Baker fight against Abu Baker and Ben Fell. I didn't end up actually seeing the result, but I think Ben Fell got the victory in that. Not really much to say about it. It was okay, you know. I won't really go too deep into it. Alois Jr. versus Ellis Zorro. Now, I didn't put my predictions in. However, I did, in my predictions league, I did predict that Ellis would get stopped late in the fight. I think I said round 8 or 9. I just thought that Alois would eventually get to him with the power, and obviously Ellis being a bit shaky coming off of 2 back-to-back KO defeats. I just didn't know if he would necessarily have the right resistance, but that prediction did go in prior to the press conference, where obviously Alois Jr. said some very tasty stuff which Ellis took exception to. So, you know, maybe that gave him a little bit of extra impetus to say, even if I don't win this, you're not getting the satisfaction of adding me to your reel. Now, watching the fight, I actually think it was a very close fight. 96-94 either way would have been acceptable. 95-95 would have been acceptable. But there was 2 judges. One scored about 97-93. The other one scored it 98-93. I mean, look, honestly, looking at the fight, I can't really see that Alois won 7 rounds. Again, maybe you can give him 6. 5, I think, is a fair reflection, but 7 I don't agree with, and I definitely don't agree with basically giving him a share of 8 altogether. I know they spoke about that on the on the broadcast briefly, but yeah, I didn't really feel that was correct at all. But you know, I guess it's not for me to decide. I guess everyone else can decide how they felt about that. But it was a much better performance from Ellis Zorro than I was expecting. Maybe he's over the demons of those first couple of fights. Although the only problem is, you know, now that is 3 defeats in a row, which isn't great. Obviously, you could say the first one you kind of chalk it off because it's against the greatest cruiserweight of you know, sort of that's currently out there supposedly. And then the second one, you know, it was a big British title fight and you sort of just came up a bit short. This one's similar, but, you know, it's 3 in a row. Let's see ultimately what happens next. But, you know, for someone that started boxing at the age of 21, now 32, only been boxing 11 years, you know, he's made some good money and he's made a decent career of it. It's just to wait and see and decide what he's going to do moving forward. Next, we had Ryan Garner and Reece Bellotti. Now, in my predictions table, I actually put down for Reece Bellotti to nick it on a split decision. I just thought that he would have the extra work rate, but Garner pretty much made it I won't say it was a shutout, but he definitely outworked, out-hustled, and out-fought and out-dogged Reece Bellotti for the majority of the fight. And then obviously right at the end, he manages to get himself a last minute, last round stoppage from the referee. I know Reece Belotti was kind of protesting a little bit. He said he was still okay. He was still defending. He was firing back, but he had taken some big shots at that point, and he was well behind on the cards. So I guess the referee felt it was best to kind of save him for another day. He made a bit of a bit of a quip about, oh well, if Eddie Hearn will bring me back, we'll see how he feels about a loser. And definitely, Eddie, the money's gonna go down significantly now that I've lost. I was like, oh, he's really putting the the words out there. So obviously that's kind of a bit of a smart move, because if Eddie does use him again, he's got to kind of maybe not drop the money as much as he wanted to, because Reese just kind of put it out there. Oh, he doesn't treat you the nicest if you lose, kind of thing. And he's got to kind of prove that not to be the case, which I thought was a bit funny. But no, shout out to Reece Beloit. He made a go of it. And Garner, he did his thing. Shout out to Ryan Garner, and he said he wants to have a fight at Southampton. I think it's St Mary's Stadium. I think that's what he wants next. Let's see if he can get it. Now, I haven't watched any of the Top Rank card, as it wasn't broadcast on Sky Sports. I do have a potential link I could have used, but to be honest, the DAZN was there on the TV. I just figured, let me watch the DAZN card instead. Now, I didn't actually stay up for... Yeah, I ended up falling asleep sort of before the end of the Belotti fight, and then went back and rewatched that, and then came in to the Clarissa Shields card, just because obviously it was on. And it was who was it that was fighting? It was a guy called Price. I think it was Price Thomas. Price Thomas and something Sims. Trying to remember. I think it's Price Thomas and maybe Jonathan Sims, possibly. Both guys extremely heavy. I mean, Price came in at like 278 pounds, and I think Sims came in at like 286. But he looked like he was about 5'9", maybe. Maybe 5'10". So for him to be that heavy, I mean, look, I guess he could carry it, but it didn't really show the best of him. But he's a guy apparently had never been knocked out before, and I guess because he hadn't been knocked out, it would have been, Price Thomas would have had that little scalp to try and get that victory. There was no knockout. Now, to be fair, this Price Thomas, he looked all right, but he didn't have any. I don't really think he had power, because I mean, there was a couple of times he rocked Sims, but didn't really do much with it. He did a lot of showboating, I guess, because he kind of knew he couldn't get the guy out of there. They was moaning about the showboating on the broadcast. I thought it was quite cool, to be honest. And some of it, when he was doing his no-look punches, he just looked like a much bigger, less coordinated version of Ben Whittaker, to be honest. And a lot of them was happy with Ben Whittaker doing all the showboating and stuff. So for them to be now all of a sudden upset about this guy, the only thing, I guess, maybe the reason why is because there was a lot of times there was lulls in action with he's doing the showboating. So it was what it was, but I found it mildly entertaining. I'd be interested to see him in the ring with someone of a slightly better level, although he obviously looks like he's in that building phase of his career. Maybe bring him over to the UK, put him in with one of the lower level guys over here, Johnny Fisher. Who else? Like Nick Webb, maybe. Sort of someone along that ilk, and just see sort of what he's got, I suppose. But then from there it was Tony Harrison against, what was the guy's name? Was it Perez? Diaz? I'm trying to... put it this way, it wasn't really a memorable thing. But obviously, Tony Harrison had been out of the ring for like 3 years. I think his last fight was the Tim Tszyu fight. Uh, what was it? Edward Diaz, I think the guy's name was. Um, and it's funny because in the whole broadcast, they kept speaking about, Tony Harrison's got the skills, he's got the jab, he's got the movement, like he's got everything, but like there's this ninth round curse where he just always seems to switch off and get caught, and can he survive the ninth round curse? And they just kept bringing it into existence, all to when it gets to the ninth round, and they're right at the very end of the ninth round, after pretty much bossing and dominating the entire fight, he ends up just getting caught in a bit of a flurry. Gets the guy Diaz throws a left, and he manages just about to get his hand up, but as he's coming back the other side, the right hand, or I guess technically on his side it would have been the left hand, so he didn't come up quick enough, and he gets caught with a big right hook, which just takes him down to the canvas. Even Diaz ends up falling to the canvas over his feet as well. He gets counted, and everyone's like, oh my god, you see, it's that ninth round. It's the ninth round. It's the same thing he always does. Can he survive this? Can he survive? And then luckily, obviously, it went straight to the bell straight after. And then in round 10, Diaz was trying to go hell for leather, especially for like the first minute and a half. But after that, Tony, to be fair, he was showing some good work in the pocket. Slipping, riding, rolling defense, like tucking up underneath, some good body shots, digging to the body, to the point where right towards the end of the round, it looked like he was going to stop Diaz, but they both managed to make it to the end of round 10, and Tony Harrison won, I think, on scorecards of 97, 92, 96, 93, and I think maybe 97, 93, possibly. On one of them, I think one of them was 98, 91. So pretty much, they had him dominating the entire fight except for that one moment. But yeah, I guess he's got to work on that mental switch. If it's about taking a break because he's tired, then maybe he's got to start taking breaks at round 5 or 6, because that round 9, round 10, round 11, that seems like that's always going to be the bane of him, especially moving forward. He ain't getting no younger. Although being up at 160 pounds now, that could be interesting, because he don't look particularly big at 154, let alone 160. So he's going to have to tighten up on the skills, the timing, and let's see what Superbad can do moving forward. After that, though, we had Clarissa Shields versus Lonnie Daniels. Now, I'm not going to rag on this too much, because I feel like at this point it's just me being cruel and unfair. What I will say is Clarissa at least tried to make a go of it, and to credit Lonnie Daniels, yes, in the first 2 to 3 rounds she was on her bike, like she was circling, basically moving away, staying as far away from Clarissa as she could possibly get, ducking out of shots, barely throwing anything, to the point where Clarissa just like, all right, what are we doing? And then they even did some little jokey thing at the end of the first round where they're both doing some run type thing, and then Clarissa even tries to come in on several occasions to throw these big looping hooks, and Lonnie Daniels just dodges them. And in one sense, it kind of made Clarissa look very, very foolish and clumsy, which is like, if you're supposed to be the best boxer in the world, you ain't supposed to be getting set up and made to look stupid like that. But from round sort of 3, 4 onwards, it slowed down. Both women sort of held their feet a bit more. Lonnie Daniels decided to stay and try and trade with Clarissa, which gave Clarissa basically all the openings she needed. Although Lonnie Daniels, for being the much smaller looking woman in there, she seemed to be quite strong. That Maui strength must have been inside, because she was able to push Clarissa to the ropes at times. I think sometimes Clarissa was happy to kind of go there just to prove that she could fight off the back foot if she needed to. But Lonnie Daniels, she landed some good shots. It was, she did okay in the bout. I can't really knock her for trying, especially towards the end, because she took some big shots as well. Although you would never know by looking at her face at the end of the fight. For all this newfound size, weight, and meat that Clarissa's got on the body, like, the shots still ain't doing no damage. I don't know if it's because she just can't turn the knuckles over properly, or she she may be heavy-handed, but there's just nothing else in it. Because again, Lonnie Daniels, looking at her at the end of the fight, looked like she had how she looked right at the start of the fight, minus a little bit of well, I should say, in addition to a little bit of extra sweat. That's really all it kind of seemed like. But Clarissa did boss it, although seeing her at that size, now even though she kind of looked like twice the size of Lonnie Daniels in there, you can tell that she can't. Her being up there, if there was better talent, she would have some problems. Yeah, she still got the fast hands, but her feet were mad ploddy. She was moving like she was moving in quicksand a lot of the time, a very wide stance, like flat footed, rather than sort of the way that she used to fight, a bit more, sort of a bit more spring. She couldn't really get into range. The only time that she was able to really have much success trying to get into range was when she was shooting the double, triple, and quadruple jab, which Lonnie Daniels was managing to avoid the majority of it. But yeah, she was moving like George Foreman, and not the prime George Foreman, the Foreman that came back in the 90s. That's how she was just kind of plodding around the ring. Now, part of it might have been about, trying to conserve energy. And I think in the post-fight interview, she said something about, oh, she was running, so I had to use up my gas tank to catch her. So I got tired a little earlier. Well, yeah, you got tired because you're at a weight class you shouldn't really be at. But you're at that weight class because there's nothing but cannon fodder to fight. I mean, Lonnie Daniels, 37 years old, 7 years older than you. The last opponent was 13 years older than you, had never even gone past a 6-rounder before. I think Lonnie Daniels had a decent amateur career in Australia, even though she's obviously from New Zealand. But she was already like 11-2-2. It's time to come back down to decent weights. 168 is the lowest you can compete at and have any competition, even if you've got to have rematches, whether that's Franchon Cruz, whether that's Savannah Marshall, or even Shadeja Green now that she got that belt. If you get down to 160, maybe you could do a catch weight with, maybe you can get Lauren Price to meet you at a catch weight at 160 or like 158 or something like that, to just to have an opportunity. Or you've got, Tam Tebow, who I say after maybe 2 or 3 fights might be ready to sort of jump in there. And I think that would be a great fight down the line as well. But at this point in time, there's just no depth in the upper echelons of the women's the women's divisions, which is exactly why I can't rate most of Clarissa's achievements. This whole free weight undisputed and all of that stuff, I give you grace for it for 154 and 160. Cool, you was unified at 168, you could go down to 168, try become undisputed there. That would be a 4th weight class. I'll give you more consideration for there, because there's at least a couple of people down there that they may not be as good as you, but they're sort of the next best thing in sort of those upper weight classes. But 175, 200, like there's nothing there. So you becoming undisputed at heavyweight, bearing in mind that 3 of the belts you fought for were vacant at that time, the same as 2 of the belts that you fought for at 154 were vacant. I think 2 belts or 1 belt at once. I think 2 belts at 160 was vacant, and I think 1 of the belts at 168 was vacant. Like there's a lot of, I guess, handing straps out to give you the achievements. Again, I can't blame you totally for that. That's not your fault. You're a big girl. I get it. But that's just the only reason why the whole growth talk does, if you're looking at just achievements and what it shows on paper, cool. Yes, it looks impressive. 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 3 division undisputed, I think 4-time undisputed in total, for, in the women's code. It looks amazing. But then when you look through the resume and see who you fought, 16 fights, 17 fights now, I think there's only 3 credible names on that, maybe 4. You got, obviously, Franchon Cruz was the debut. Can't really count that one, to be fair. It was a 4-rounder for the both of you, although, yes, it aged well. You got Nikki Adler, you probably got Christina Hammer, and then maybe Aline Cedar-Ruz and Savannah Marshall. So, like, those four fights are all you really can hang your hat on. Maybe if you're going to be generous, also Hannah Gabriels, who obviously was a much smaller woman moving up to a much bigger weight class, although yeah, she did go up and win that heavyweight the light heavyweight title as well, I believe. So we'll give you 5. I'll give you 5 wins out of your 17 in terms of what's on the resume. And you know, you look at that, and unfortunately, that's just not enough. And I'm probably one of the only ones that knows those people, apart from Savannah Marshall and maybe Franchon. So yeah, there's more work to be done, and unfortunately, it's got to be done at lower weights. I know you're probably liking to eat right about now, but you got to get on that diet, got to trim down, get yourself back down to like 160, 154, or even 168, because there's about 2 or 3 different competitors there who at least you can have a couple, you can run a couple trilogies with. You know, even if you win all 3 bouts, you know, Katie Taylor did it with Amanda Serrano. So there's no reason why you can't do it with Savannah Marshall or Franchon Cruz or Shadeja Green. That's the way I see it. But I think Tam Tebow is probably the next problem for Clarissa if she does decide to go back down to sort of that 160 region. In terms of the top rank card, again, I didn't see it. I saw the Emiliano Vargas knockout though, which was very impressive. And then I know Shushu Carrington beat Mateus Hayter, unanimous decision, which I did predict on my predictions league. And Xander Zayas beat what's his name, Perez. What was he? It's like he was 33-4 before the bout or something like that. I mean, like I said, every bout was just kind of, it was A-side heavy this week, so it didn't really feel the need to do the basis picks or whatever. But look, yeah, I'm doing the weekend wrap. I'm going to wrap it there. I think I'm under 20 minutes, which is good because there's not really much else to talk about. Other bits and pieces, there definitely will be content this week. I should have a couple of live interviews that I've got scheduled. I don't know if they're going to be live or pre-recorded to be released, but I've got one that's definitely in the pipeline for this week, and then hopefully 1 or 2 for next week as well. But look, thank you guys for watching. Again, apologies that there's been no content this week, but there's not going to be a huge amount of content for the next couple of weeks as boxing sort of, you know, has its little lull, you know, holidays period before we ramp back up for September. But we'll do a watch along for SummerSlam night 1 and 2 next week, and then 2 weeks from then we will do the watch along for Dillian White and Moses Atama. So yeah, mark all that in your diaries, and I will see you guys then. But yeah, that's the weekend wrapped up. Until the next one, peace.